Have you ever had one of those days where everything seems to go wrong? You wake up already tired. You spill your coffee. Your phone glitch. A simple task takes twice as long. A small mistake feels humiliating. And by the end of the day, a quiet thought settles in your mind. Of course, this would happen to me. It feels like life itself is working against you. When you're depressed, these moments don't feel random. They feel connected, like evidence, like proof that something is fundamentally wrong, not just with a day, but with you. And that's what makes depression so convincing. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't always arrive as sadness. Often, it shows up as a pattern, a sense that nothing flows, that every step forward requires effort, that no matter what you do, something always falls apart. You start to believe you're cursed, or broken, or fundamentally unlucky. But what if that isn't true? What if the problem isn't that everything is going wrong, but that your mind is interpreting everything through a distorted lens? Depression doesn't just affect how you feel. It affects how you see. It subtly changes how your brain filters information, how it assigns meaning, and how it predicts outcomes. Neutral events begin to feel hostile. Minor setbacks feel catastrophic. Coincidences start to look personal. And because the experiences are real, the conclusions feel undeniable. This is why advice like think positive feels insulting. You're not choosing negativity. You're responding to what feels like overwhelming evidence that life itself is failing you. But depression is not a reflection of reality. It's a shift in perception. In this video, we're going to break down why everything seems to go wrong when you're depressed, not in a motivational way. And not by minimizing your pain, but by explaining what's actually happening inside your mind. We'll explore how depression creates self-fulfilling cycles, why it rewrites your interpretation of events, and how it quietly manufactures proof that it's right. Most importantly, we'll talk about how this cycle can be interrupted. Because feeling like everything is going wrong doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're incapable. And it doesn't mean life is against you. It means your mind is tired, and tired minds tell convincing lies. Asterisk depression is often described as a mood disorder, but that description misses something crucial. Depression does not only change how you feel, it changes how you perceive reality. When you're depressed, the world itself seems different. Colors feel duller. Time feels heavier. Simple tasks feel complicated. Interactions feel tense, even when nothing objectively went wrong. It's as if a filter has been placed over everything you experienced, one that quietly bends events toward negativity. And the most dangerous part is this: the distortion feels true. Your brain begins to prioritize certain information while ignoring other details. Failures stand out sharply. Successes fade quickly. Neutral moments disappear entirely. The mind becomes selective not randomly, but systematically. It highlights evidence that supports a single conclusion. Things are going wrong. This isn't weakness. It's neuropsychology. When depression takes hold, the brain's threat detection systems become overactive. The mind scans constantly for danger, rejection, or failure. It's trying to protect you, but it does so by assuming the worst. Every setback feels like confirmation. Every mistake feels permanent. This is why depressed people often say, "I know it's irrational, but it feels real," because it is real to the brain experiencing it. Depression turns the mind into a biased narrator. It doesn't invent events, it edits them. It rearranges emphasis. It tells a story where problems are foregrounded and hope is quietly removed from the frame. So when things go wrong, because things always go wrong, sometimes they don't land as isolated incidents. They stack, they accumulate. They become part of a larger narrative that says, "See, this always happens." And once that narrative takes hold, perception begins to influence behavior. You hesitate more, you withdraw slightly. You expect failure before it happens, and then, inevitably, life responds to that hesitation. Opportunities are missed. Conversations become awkward. Tasks are delayed. Not because you're incapable, but because your perception has shifted your posture toward the world. This is how depression creates the illusion that life itself is collapsing. Not because the world has changed, but because the lens through which you see it has understanding. This is not about denying your pain. It's about recognizing that the story depression tells you is incomplete, and incomplete stories can be rewritten. Once depression shifts your perception, it doesn't stop there. It organizes that distortion into a system. Psychologist Aaron Beck identified this system as the negative cognitive triad, 3 core beliefs that quietly reshape how a depressed mind interprets reality. The first belief is about the self. Something is wrong with me. Mistakes stop being events and start feeling like identities. A forgotten message becomes proof of incompetence. A moment of hesitation becomes evidence of weakness. You no longer say, "I failed." You say, "I am a failure." The second belief is about the world. The world is hostile, unfair, or empty. Neutral interactions feel cold. Silence feels like rejection. Small inconveniences feel intentional. Life begins to feel rigged against you, not dramatically, but quietly, as if resistance is built into every step forward. The third belief is about the future. Nothing will get better. Hope doesn't disappear loudly. It erodes. The future starts to feel closed, predictable, already decided. Even when change is possible, it feels unreachable. Improvement begins to sound naive. Together, these 3 beliefs create a closed loop. If you are broken, and the world is hostile, and the future is hopeless, then effort feels pointless. And when effort disappears, outcomes worsen. This is why depression feels so convincing. It doesn't argue aggressively. It presents a coherent story, a story where giving up feels logical, where trying feels foolish, and where suffering feels permanent. The most dangerous part of the cognitive triad is that it operates beneath awareness. These beliefs don't feel like thoughts. They feel like facts, like background, truths that don't need to be questioned. But they can be questioned. The negative cognitive triad is not a diagnosis of reality. It is a pattern of interpretation. And once you see the pattern, you begin to notice something crucial. These beliefs are not conclusions you've been trained into them by repetition, stress, and exhaustion. Depression did not reveal the truth about you, the world, or the futuri. It constructed a story under pressure. And stories, no matter how convincing, can be rewritten. Once the negative beliefs take root, they don't stay abstract. They begin to speak, not in full sentences, not in dramatic declarations, but in quiet reactions that fire automatically before a reason has time to respond. These are automatic negative thoughts. They arrive instantly, without invitation. You wake up tired, and the thought appears. Today is already ruined. Someone doesn't reply, and the thought follows. They don't care. You make a small mistake, and the conclusion is immediate. I always mess things up. There is no pause. No debate. The thought feels like an observation, not an opinion. That's what makes them so powerful. Automatic negative thoughts don't announce themselves as distortions. They masquerade as realism. They sound practical, cautious, even intelligent. I'm just being honest, the mind says. I'm just seeing things clearly. But clarity is not the same as accuracy. These thoughts are fast because they're familiar. They've been repeated so often that the brain no longer evaluates them, it recognizes them. Like a worn path through a forest, they become the default route. And each time they appear unchallenged, they reinforce the deeper beliefs beneath them. If the thought says, "This will never work," the belief about the future strengthens. If the thought says, "You're embarrassing yourself," the belief about the self deepens. If the thought says, "People can't be trusted," the belief about the world hardens. This is how depression maintains itself, not through overwhelming emotion alone, but through thousands of small, unquestioned conclusions. What's crucial to understand is this: having an automatic negative thought does not mean it is true. It means it is practiced. The mind under depression is not. Broken-eyed is overtrained in pessimism. And the moment you notice a thought is automatic, it loses some of its authority. It becomes something you have, not something you are. That shift is subtle, but it's the beginning of leverage, because thoughts that arise automatically can also be interrupted. And once interrupted, they can be replaced. Depression doesn't only change how you think, it changes how you move. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly, through avoidance. You stop replying as quickly. You cancel plans you once enjoyed. You postpone small tasks, then larger ones. Not because you don't care about it, because everything feels heavier than it should. This is behavioral withdrawal. At first, it feels like self-protection, rest, conservation. I'll do it when I feel better. But the relief is temporary, because every avoided action sends a message to the brain. This is dangerous. This is too much. I can't handle this. And the brain listens. Activities that once brought pleasure begin to feel effortful. Effortful activities begin to feel impossible. Your world slowly contracts, not from external limits, but from internal retreat. Depression convinces you that motivation must come before action. But the nervous system works the opposite way. Action comes first. Emotion follows. When action disappears, the feedback loop collapses. There are fewer positive experiences to contradict negative beliefs, fewer moments of mastery, fewer reminders that effort can lead somewhere other than exhaustion. And so the mind concludes, "See? Nothing helps." But something else is happening beneath the surface. The less you engage, the less stimulation your brain receives. The less stimulation it receives, the more it defaults to rumination and playing memories, worries, and self-criticism on repeat. Stillness becomes a trap. This is why depression often feels worse when nothing is happening. Silence gives the inner critic uninterrupted access. Behavioral withdrawal is not laziness. It is not weakness. It is a survival response that has overstayed its purpose. And like any habit formed under pressure, it can be reversed, but not through force and not through motivation. Through small, deliberate re-entry. Not by fixing your entire life, but by expanding it an inch at a time. Because the opposite of depression is not happiness, it is engagement. One of the most confusing parts of depression is not the sadness. It's the effort. Simple tasks feel overwhelming. Getting out of bed feels like lifting weight. Making a decision feels like solving a puzzle with missing pieces. Even things you want to do feel strangely inaccessible. And this creates a quiet fear. If everything feels this hard, something must be seriously wrong with me. But what you're experiencing is not a failure of character. It's a failure of energy regulation. Depression places the nervous system into a chronic state of threat. Not the sharp, panicked kind, but the slow, draining kind. The body behaves as if danger is constant. And when danger feels constant, the system conserves resources. Energy drops. Focused narrows. Initiative phages. The brain begins to prioritize survival over exploration. Novelty feels risky. Choice feels costly. Everything is filtered through one question. Is this worth the effort? And most things don't pass the test. This is why advice like just try harder doesn't work. Effort itself has become expensive. Willpower is not absent, it's depleted. The depressed brain is doing less, not because it doesn't care, but because it's already working overtime internally. Rumination, self-monitoring, emotional suppression, these processes consume enormous cognitive energy. From the outside, it looks like inactivity. On the inside, it's exhaustion. This mismatch creates shame. You judge yourself by external output while ignoring the internal cost. You compare your capacity now to who you were before and conclude that you're failing. But capacity is not fixed. It fluctuates. With state in depression, the margin for error shrinks. Small setbacks feel catastrophic because there is no surplus energy to absorb them. One bad interaction can collapse the entire day. One unfinished task can spiral into self-judgment. Understanding this changes the question. Instead of asking, "Why can't I do more?" the real question becomes, "What is draining me?" Because healing does not begin by demanding more from a depleted system. It begins by reducing the load. Asterisk, when depression lingers, something else quietly takes its place alongside exhaustion. Shame, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet, corrosive belief that your struggle is a personal failure. That if you were stronger, smarter, or more disciplined, you wouldn't feel this way. That other people manage life just fine. So your difficulty must say something about who you are. This is where self-blame takes root. You start explaining your symptoms as flaws. Low energy becomes laziness. Withdrawal becomes selfishness. Indecision becomes incompetence. And once shame enters the picture, everything becomes harder. Shame doesn't motivate change. It paralyzes it. It turns the mind inward, where every thought is filtered through judgment. Instead of asking, "What do I need?" you ask, "What's wrong with me?" Depression feeds on this question. Because shame collapses complexity into character. It ignores biology, stress, loss, and overload and replaces them with a single conclusion: I'm the problem. But here's the truth that depression hides from you. People who are lazy do not feel tormented by their inaction. People who don't care do not feel guilt for withdrawing. People who are broken do not ache to be whole. The presence of shame is not proof of failure. It's proof that you care while being overwhelmed. Self-blame also keeps depression in place by making help feel undeserved. You hesitate to reach out because you don't want to burden others. You minimize your pain because others have it worse. You delay support until things are unbearable, then criticize yourself for needing it. This creates isolation. Isolation intensifies rumination. Rumination deepens depression, and the cycle tightens. Breaking this trap does not begin with self-love or positivity. It begins with accuracy, with naming what's happening honestly without moral judgment. You are not failing at life. Your system is under strain, and systems under strain do not respond to criticism. They respond to care, clarity, and relief. The moment you replace self-blame with understanding, you don't become weaker. You become reachable. Depression convinces you that change must be dramatic to matter, that if you can't fix everything, there's no point doing anything. This belief keeps the cycle alive, because depression's not broken by breakthroughs. It's broken by interruptions. Small actions don't feel powerful when you're depressed. They feel insignificant, almost insulting. What difference could this possibly make? The mind asks, but the mind is wrong. Small actions matter because they bypass motivation. They don't ask how you feel. They ask only whether you can move slightly despite how you feel. One dish washed, one email sent, one short walk, one honest sentence written. These actions do not solve your life. They change your nervous system. Action sends a signal that thought alone cannot. I am not completely stuck. And that signal repeated gently begins to loosen the grip of helplessness. This is why behavioral activation works, even when belief does not. You don't need to feel hopeful. You don't need to feel ready. You only need to do something small enough that resistance cannot fully stop you. Depression thrives in all-or-nothing thinking. Small action breaks that illusion. When you act, even minimally, the brain receives new information, not optimism but evidence. Evidence that effort does not always end in catastrophe. Evidence that movement does not equal danger. Over time, these moments accumulate. They don't feel like progress while they're happening. They feel awkward, mechanical, unimpressive, but they work. Because depression is not a single wall, it's a maze of habits, beliefs, and physiological states. And mazes are not escaped by force. They're escaped by finding one open path at a time. You are not waiting to feel better to act. You are acting so feeling better becomes possible. This is not about discipline. It's about direction, and direction. No matter how small is enough to begin changing where you end up. Depression quietly pushes you toward this belief. It rewrites effort as failure, exhaustion as weakness, struggle as proof that you're falling behind some invisible standard everyone else seems to meet. But nothing you've experienced points to BROKENNESS. Points to overload. A mind under depression is not defective, it is overwhelmed. It is trying to protect itself with the wrong tools, in the wrong environment, for too long, and eventually, those tools begin to hurt more than they help. This is why understanding matters. Not so you can intellectualize your pain, not so you can explain it away, but so you can stop turning it into a verdict about who you are. You are responding imperfectly. Human lead to a system that is under strain. And systems can change. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually through interruption, relief, and care. You don't need to fix your entire future. You don't need to feel confident or inspired. You don't even need to believe things will get better. Only need to stop believing that feeling. This way means you are beyond help. Because the fact that you're still searching for understanding, still watching, still listening, means something important has not disappeared. Your capacity to respond. Healing doesn't begin when life suddenly feels easy. It begins when you stop treating your pain as a personal failure. So if today feels heavy, let it be heavy without turning it into a story about your worth. If everything feels like it's going wrong, pause before concluding that it always will. Depression is convincing, but it is not truthful. And the fact that you're here, right now, means the story is not finished.